What is happening in the city right now?
Well, I can tell you that there definitely are more guns that are out there. This year to date, we've seized over 250 guns, and 100, if not more, are handguns. So there is a concern. Our officers are working actively to figure out exactly what we can do to minimize the gunplay that's happening in the city.
But a pregnant woman shot in a drive-by shooting, a shooting in broad daylight at a mall on the other side of town. What's going on in the city?
Yeah, Matt, this is something that is a question that is raised quite a bit, and more concerning was the fact that this occurrence happened and it wasn't in a vacuum. Nobody called 911, and so it saddens me that here we have a community that is pleading and asking for help and assistance, but they're climatizing to the fact that shots are being fired and nobody's calling. So we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to strengthen the relationship that we have.
We heard from residents in Jamestown yesterday, and as I said, they felt hopeless. What does that say to you? When residents there are afraid to go out, they're afraid to send their kids out, they can't get food delivered, Pizza Man won't come and deliver it to their house, and they feel hopeless. What does that say to you?
Well, that says that we need to take a strong look at what we can do as law enforcement to assist so that people can feel safe walking in public spaces. I can tell you within that particular neighborhood, we have added so many more resources in the past couple of weeks. I've had a higher level of uniform presence. I've had my guns and gangs. I've had my intelligence folks doing tremendous work in that area to help reduce the violent crime that has occurred. And the numbers have been reduced. And unfortunately, Miss Bobb was murdered in that very same area where we've put a lot of resources.
61% increase in shooting deaths up something like 217%, 29 murders so far this year. Is this city in the midst of a violent crisis?
Well, here's what I'll say. We've got 2.8 million people in this city, and out of those 2.8, we have a very, very small segment of people that are carrying guns and using guns to resolve issues. I think that we have an opportunity here to win this battle. Members of the community know who these people are that are carrying those firearms, and we need them to assist us in identifying who those people are so that we can take the proper action accordingly.
I want to talk about getting that help in a moment, but let's take a look at why this is happening. Why are more people carrying guns right now?
That's something that is the million-dollar question happening right across North America. I'm part of the major city chiefs of police, and all of the major city chiefs are having the exact same dialogue, and we've all come out and said that there is no simple solution. There are many complexities to it. No one can really, can nail it down as to this is the cause.
There are a lot of people who are saying this may be the cause. One of them, the leader of the union that represents your officers, who in an open letter that was published in newspapers yesterday said that there is concern around the end of carding and what that's doing to officers' ability to work on the streets. He said, Mike McCormick, this is a quotation, "There is a definite link in the reduction of proactive policing and violent crime." Do you agree?
Time will tell at the end of the day.
But do you agree with that statement?
Well, that he's oversimplifying it. There are a lot of factors that are causing people to be carrying firearms right now, Matt, and these are things that we need to work with in order to get the right answers. So to commit to one single reason, I don't think that would be a fair assessment.
Do you think the increase in gun crime has anything to do with the end of carding?
We won't know, and that's something that I really can't answer.
But right now, this is something we've talked about before, and I know as the head of homicide, when we spoke when you were in that position, you talked a lot about what officers were able to do to be proactive on the streets.
You bet.
Do you think that there is any connection whatsoever between the end of an officer's ability to randomly stop people on the street and the rise in people that you say are carrying guns in the streets of Toronto?
Well, let's be very clear that you will never have me documented saying that I supported the random stopping of anybody, nor will I ever say that, because that's not proper law enforcement. I've always said that when we use our intelligence-led tools to try to solve crimes, that we get better results.
There's a quote in the Toronto Sun from an unnamed senior officer saying, "We have an upper command that is paralyzed with fear. Most of the guys feel we have a rudderless ship." What do you make of that comment from one of your own?
I don't pay a great deal of attention to anonymous sources, and that's not quite accurate. Listen, our men and women are doing a fantastic job out on the street. Now, the one thing that we need to do is we need to have a stronger connection with certain communities right now, and that's something that we're working towards, which is why we have Focus, our hub systems that are in play right now. We're looking at expanding them, and also trying to make sure that the community works with us so that we have sustainable solutions and not just us doing doing the continuous law enforcement.
One of the things you talked about yesterday in a news conference was the idea of getting the public to work closer with police. This has been, I mean, again, we've spoken about this. I've spoken with your predecessor, Bill Blair, about this. How do you get people to work with police and feel that they can trust police? You said that time and legitimacy will help the force build trust with the public. What do you mean by legitimacy?
Well, legitimacy means, it doesn't matter what procedures, what policies, what governance we have in play. It's how we act and how we behave and how we interact with the public. And if we treat everybody with that respect and with that dignity over a period of time, people will realize that we're serious at what we do and we're doing it in a professional way.
Do you feel that police have a legitimacy problem when it comes to certain members of the public, that certain members of the public don't see the police in a legitimate role?
There are certain advocates that simply do not like the police, and they have their reasons based on their experiences and what they've heard.
But in the general public, in terms of trying to convince people to come forward, do you think that police have a credibility problem?
No, I wouldn't say that. And the reason why I say that, Matt, is I'll take my homicides as a classic example. When I look at the boxes that we have right now, the vast majority of those boxes, we have a very good idea as who's committed that murder. The problem is we don't have the witnesses. The witness is the hard part. So we've got informants still talking to us, agents talking to us, and Crime Stoppers. So the public, they are helping us. But the witness piece is where there is that gap, and that's what we're trying to move towards right now.
Do you think that the ongoing controversy around the shooting of Andrew Loco has anything to do with the legitimacy issue when it comes to police?
No, but I think what it's done, it has opened the question with respect to accountability and transparency, which is something that we've always strived towards. And I can tell you from our perspective, that's something that we know that's important.
So what is the connection then between that transparency and that accountability and getting witnesses to come forward, getting people to trust police?
Well, the difference is that witnesses are people who have to take the stand and testify in a courtroom. And a lot of people find that very hard to do. Do they trust us? Yes, they do, because they are giving us the information. But it's the medium in which they're giving us the information that is a problem, that it decides whether or not a case remains open or whether or not a case remains solved. And that's where we have to work. That's where we have our problem, because people don't want to go that extra step. A lot of people are, which is why we're solving cases each and every day. But when it comes to the street gang violence, people have a reluctancy because they're concerned for their safety.
Just finally on this matter, CBC News is reporting that this latest shooting, drive-by shooting of a pregnant woman, may be connected to a gang war. Are we in the midst of a gang war right now, John?
Well, we know that there are gangs that are rival against each other, which is what our intelligence is telling us, and we have taken the appropriate steps by putting the resources in those places to further investigate and apprehend.
So there is a gang war that's happening in the city?
There are many rivalries that are occurring within the gang subculture, which is why we have these shootings.
This is a question from one of our listeners, Nadia. What have you and what are you doing in probably concert with city councillors to get resources into communities like Jamestown so that young people aren't steered towards the gangs that you've just been describing?
Yeah. Well, the Toronto Police, we have hundreds of different community response activities that we do on a daily basis in working with our communities that are not the police type of things. We've got different sporting programs. We've got different hiking programs. We've done some tutoring. We've done a lot of things, and we continue to work with all of our communities in that capacity as well. It's important to create as much of a bond and relationship with our communities, and not just the enforcement piece if we are going to be successful.
And does taking your kids out on a hike keep them away from being in a gang?
You know what it does? When you're dealing with at-risk young men and women, it gives an opportunity to take them out of their comfort zone into an environment where you can actually have strong conversations and both sides listen to each other. The police learn a lot about the young men and women that are in the communities, and the communities learn a lot about our men and women. So it does create stronger relationships.
I was talking to Mark Saunders, who was the head of homicide. What would he be saying about the spike in gun crime right now?
There would be a couple of things. Number one, I would be talking a lot, as an investigator, I'd be talking a lot about the importance of taking that extra step and being a witness and helping us solve crimes. We cannot do this alone, and we never can. And especially with murder cases, the vast majority of them are not in silos. They're out there in public spaces, and people know. And I know that people know, and based on my experience, I've stepped over many a young man, and I've gathered many witnesses who were brave enough to help us in solving crimes.
Are we going to have, as the head of the police union has suggested, a long, hot, violent summer in Toronto?
No, I don't think that that's going to be happening. I'm going to make sure that I will do absolutely everything that I can and utilize all of the resources that we can in order to keep Toronto the best and safest city to live in.
Let's talk about just a couple of other matters now that you're here. Connected with this, and connected with this idea of legitimacy.
You've got me cornered, Matt, so go ahead.
It's a big, wide open studio.
Yeah, no kidding.
No corners
I think you've
here.
locked the door.
Black Lives Matter Toronto camped out in front of your office for weeks on end, in the rain, in the snow. And this is a question, again, about legitimacy when it comes to police. Why didn't you go out and meet with them?
Well, there's a main reason. I really didn't think that I had anything to offer. Their demand from me, the specific demand for me, was identify the person who shot Andrew Loco and charge him with murder. And that wasn't going to happen for both counts. Number one, it wasn't lawful. And number two, I was not going to do that. So rather than go out there and have that U2 moment of people yelling, that wasn't going to move anything further.
But you saw what happened with the Premier. The Premier went out, surrounded by security. She had that YouTube moment. But in many ways, it changed the conversation. She was able to engage with protesters. She was shouted at there, but she was also able to engage with them. There were meetings that followed that. They were right in front of your office. Why not go out and at least acknowledge them?
Well, if we go back in time, and as I stated, I had the door open. I had the door open for them to talk to me on numerous occasions. In January, I invited them. They said they were going to come. They bailed out at the last minute. In February, same thing, bailed out at the last minute. And my door is never shut. It was never shut. In hindsight, going out is something that I would take a second look at.
Will you meet with them in future?
I've never closed the door.
But if they were to offer a meeting or say, we would like to meet with you, you would consider something like that?
No, I've never closed the door, Matt, and my door is always open. Anyone that has solutions to help to keep this city better and safer, anything that concerns transparency, accountability, I'm there for it.
What do you think their role is in all of that? What do you think their place is in that conversation about transparency and accountability?
Well, I think that it was a symptom. Black Lives Matter was a symptom, and the symptom was that they felt that they were not receiving enough information about one of our shootings. And as a police chief, it's tough for us because we turn our evidence over to the SIU. We're not allowed to conduct investigations. And so we give that information over to the SIU, and at the end of the day, we get a one-page letter saying, here's what the outcomes are. So it's frustrating from all accounts, and this has caused a narrative to occur, which has occurred over the past couple of weeks now.
One of the other issues that's happening in the city right now is, you'll well know of this, the prevalence, the proliferation of marijuana dispensaries. There are some that are medical marijuana dispensaries. There are others that are offering what people call prescriptions of convenience, where if you have an itch or you've had a headache, you can go in, you'll be hooked up on Skype with some sort of doctor, medical professional, and you'll leave with a card that allows you to buy dope. These are people who are breaking the law in selling marijuana. Why is the police force not cracking down on those people who are breaking the law?
Well, once again, that is a gray area. We're waiting for the federal government to do what they need to do. But what I can tell you we're doing is I'm working with the City Hall and I'm working with the federal crowns right now to determine what the best course of action is at this point in time.
But is it a gray area? Right now, the law will change at some point in time, but the law right now is that selling marijuana is illegal. So why aren't police going into those spots? A storefront, not somebody with a dime bag on the corner, but a storefront selling weed. Why is the police not going in there?
Well, what we're doing is we're investigating all complaints that are coming in concerning it. And as I've said, we're working with the city and we're working with the federal prosecutors to see exactly what the best direction is. And I'm pretty sure that we will come out with the right plan once we all sit down and figure it out.
Do you feel hamstrung by the federal government in this? I mean, they've kind of left forces. We've heard this from other chiefs. They've left forces in limbo in some way, haven't they?
Well, it's these transitions always leave that buffer space where it's really, really hard. And the problem is you don't want to utilize the taxpayers' resources at the end of the day to find that the case gets thrown out of the courtroom.
Because the law is going to change.
Exactly. So you really need to make sure that everybody has the right appetite to move forward. And if just one entity moves forward, it causes a lot of issues.
I want to go back to where we started, which is the comments from people in a community community that feel like they're under siege. They're worried about going out. You're the chief of police. I'm sure you've visited that community many, many times, but you're speaking to the city and to them right now. What would you say to them about the state that they're in and the state that their city's in?
Well, for sure. One of the things that we are going to do is we are going to increase our resources in that area to see what we can do to make sure that no citizen feels uncomfortable walking around in public spaces. So whatever we need to do to make sure that feeling of safety and comfort comes back, we're going to make sure we're going to be part of that.